Welcome, Climate Viewers. This is Jim Lee from ClimateViewer News at ClimateViewer.com with Facts Minus Fear Porn, and we're going to talk today about the history of weather control. It's a little known topic. Most people don't know the history, and I really want to show you something fancy we've built for you. Before we get into that, I just want to say everything you're about to see is free of charge, open source, and you're available to remix it, put it on your website. Use this. This material was built for you. So I hope that you guys will use it and, put it out there to the public because people need to get educated on the facts. And you could support my work with a monthly donation on patreon.com/climateviewer or a one-time donation on PayPal or GoFundMe. I'd greatly appreciate that. Also, before we get started, shout out to Mike Morales. He did a great video tonight, the weather control app, Who's Flying the Plane? And we had a brief discussion about the Aviation Environmental Design Tool, AEDT, and how that controls the weather, and how planes are controlled by a supercomputer. I'm going to do a lengthy video on that at a later date, but please check that out. And of course, all of my work is available at ClimateViewer.com. So the interesting thing that we're going to talk about today is the timeline. If you're on ClimateViewer.com, you can just click timeline, or if you're on any one of these pages, you're going to see on the sidebar right here, Man versus Nature, Weather Modification History.com. So we're going to go right over here. It's at weathermodificationhistory.com. Drop that in chat for you guys because I want to show you guys all the new features, tons of new stuff coming. But, before we get started, let's get a layperson's perspective on this.
Hi, I'm Caroline.
This is my daughter, Caroline. Caroline.
Yeah.
What do you think about people controlling the weather?
It's like poop.
It's like poop. Do you think that men should control the weather or God should control the weather?
God.
What do you think about plane farts?
They shouldn't be there.
Do you see them every day?
Yeah.
What do we call them?
Chemtrails?
Yeah, but I like calling them plane farts.
Yeah.
So my daughter knows a lot about weather modification history already, probably more than many of the people on the internet, because I'm constantly talking about it. Does Daddy talk about weather control a lot?
Almost every day.
Almost?
Yeah, almost every day.
Okay. Well, I love you, baby, and thank you for coming on my show briefly.
Okay, bye.
Go have fun. So, we talk about plane farts a lot and weather control, obviously. And, my daughter already knows a lot about this sort of thing, and I want you to know about it. I want you to educate your kids. That's part of the reason why we created weathermodificationhistory.com. So I want to show you guys some of the new really cool features over on weathermodificationhistory.com. I think you're going to like this. So I've redesigned the website and made it much more user-friendly. So the front page, our slogan is those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. And, please subscribe to our newsletter. I'll be sending more of those out more often. But right here is the timeline. So you can check out the new interactive timeline by clicking here or this big button, or go to any one of the sections, which are broken up into pluviculture, cloud seeding, geoengineering, and space weather. Below that is our news vault, and then we have the 10 technologies to own the weather today, people, patents, programs, and laws, my interview with Dr. Jim Fleming, the world's top historian on geoengineering, weather modification, all of that stuff. Our ClimateViewer weather modification map, which you can see the mobile map, the 3D map, or view all of the maps as a list. And then I've made a presentation section down here with all of my major presentations on weather modification and the sort. And they are geoengineering, weather modification, and weaponizing nature, ionospheric heaters, space weather control and geophysical warfare, carbon black dust, the chemtrail secret for weather warfare, geoengineering, and ozone destruction. And finally, the climate changers and water wars, technocracy, geoengineering, and replacing the water cycle. Each one of these has a PowerPoint associated with it. You can just click on these and it will take you to the page where you can actually see the slideshow, download it for yourself, and that sort of thing. So I hope that you guys will dig into those presentations. They're very informative, and they pretty much break down what's really going on, the big picture, just in 4 presentations. But we also have at the end of every single page the solutions, which are the Environmental Modification Accountability Act / #NMODAA, an act to end atmospheric experimentation without notification. Video right there. Read the solution on ClimateViewer.com. Download the PowerPoint or view it on Google Slides. And Hands Off Mother Earth Manifesto, a permanent ban on geoengineering. You can endorse that by emailing manifesto@geoengineeringmonitor.org. Read the manifesto. They were at COP24 raising hell about geoengineering, and you can check out their geoengineering monitor map. And of course, past all the comments, you can see that this is a collaboration between myself and Dominic Marama. You can get in touch with us down here, or you can embed our logo on your website with a link back to it. I'd greatly appreciate that. That'd be your way of being able to support us and get more people to read this material. So regardless, let's check out the new interactive timeline because I'm super proud of it. So now we have the history of weather control. There's exactly 150 entries in this now, and they're sortable. So you can see that they're all in a what's called masonry style, much prettier than it was before, very easy to go through. So what you can do is you can click pluviculture and see all of the stuff from the early days from 1841 to 1943 or 46, because that's when cloud seeding was invented. Cloud seeding, which has all of the stuff related just to cloud seeding. Geoengineering, similarly, only the geoengineering posts show up. And then finally space weather, which has all the stuff like HARP and steering lightning bolts and chemtrails from space. Similarly, you can click the tags button and just see chemtrails from space, which shows you things like, Project Firefly, where they were shooting cesium and barium and all of these chemicals into the sky. NASA creates clouds over Alaska, barium clouds, how HARP was invented, all of that sort of stuff. Things like this. The title says it all: artificial strontium and barium clouds in the upper atmosphere. Each post has a lot of information on it. So if you go to the timeline and you see some of the most recent ones, I just added David Keith's experiment to the list here. So if you go to this post, what you're going to see is Stratospheric Controlled Perturbation Experiment ScopeX, the Stratocruiser. And you can scroll down through there. There's some information I wrote, little quote right here. And I have added related posts to that so that you can see Bill Gates funds geoengineering research. The Intellectual Ventures Stratoshield Hose to the Sky, Silomar Conference, Stratospheric Particle Injection for Climate Engineering SPICE, Harvard Solar Geoengineering Research Program, Stratospheric Sulfur Geoengineering Benefits and Risks, and the Hands Off Mother Earth Manifesto. And then each of these has references now. Before, all of the references were just links. And I've changed up my code somewhat to where each of the links now has a title, as you can see here. This is a lot of work to just create one timeline post. This is the post we're looking at. So this is the related section. It just shows other articles on weathermodificationhistory.com. You got videos here, images, and then these are the external links, where they come from, to ClimateViewer.com articles, projects.iq.harvard.edu, and the list goes on that right there. So that's how it works. I go and I write all of these things. Climate Global Control Trading LLC, steers hurricanes, yada, yada, yada. So at the top of each of these is a little arrow. You can go back to the interactive timeline by clicking here, or you can see the previous post by clicking the arrow, and it says Hands Off Mother Earth Manifesto. You click that, it'll take you to the next post, October 2018. And you can scroll through it, same kind of deal, shows you all about it. And there are tags where you can go to the individual, like if you want to learn about solar radiation management, you can dig into it just by clicking there. This is the Hands Off Mother Earth geoengineering map. It's available at map.geoengineeringmonitor.org. This is the Hands Off Mother Earth Manifesto. I love their logo. And they're trying to make a permanent ban on geoengineering, which I applaud. It's by the ETC Group and Biofuel Watch, Friends of the Earth International, Indigenous Environmental Network, La Via Campesina, and Climate Justice Alliance. Anyway, 110 civil society organizations and popular movements demand an immediate stop to climate geoengineering. If you haven't heard about that, and of course some videos on that sort of thing, you just flip through them and they automatically play. And this one's on solar radiation management.
The particles would then act as a reflective filter, throwing a percentage of solar radiation back into space and thereby preventing it from heating up the atmosphere in the first place. The objective is thus to artificially cool down the global climate. But what would be the effects on our planet of such a large-scale technological experiment?
What would be the effects of such a large technological experiment? Well, we can look into that too, because I just added this video. Stratospheric Sulfur Geoengineering Benefits and Risks. This is by Alan Robach, and this was at the conference, the Weather Modification Conference I attended back in January. And you can see this is where it comes from. All of the links are there. So this is the American Meteorological Society 90th Annual Meeting in Austin, 2018. January 10th, I was there. Alan Robach actually passed me in the hallway as I was interviewing Dr. Jim Fleming. So I couldn't exactly just jump up and run over and grab him, which I would have loved to have done. But regardless, his recorded presentation, I put it up on YouTube. And you can see it right here. So you can play this sucker and
give sort of an overview.
This is my favorite part.
I talked about also. So I went to the first meeting on geoengineering at NASA Ames, and this issue of Rolling Stone came out that week. And across the top, it's got our two favorite people there, but across the top, Dr. Evil's plan to stop global warming. And inside there was an article about Lowell Wood, who used to work with Edward Teller, saying, oh, we can control the climate. I'm a physicist. I'm smart. I know what to do. And I went to this meeting for 2 days at NASA Ames, and the room was too hot, and they couldn't control the temperature of the room, but they were talking about controlling the temperature of the planet. And there's these physicists and engineers thought, oh, this is a really cool problem. I started writing down reasons why I thought maybe it wasn't such a good idea. And I got up to 20 and I published a paper, 20 reasons why geoengineering may be a bad idea. And since then I've looked at it more, and my latest paper has this list of 27 reasons for concern or risks. But it also has...
So I cut that picture out, and you can see it here, and it's the 27 reasons why geoengineering is a bad idea. And I hope that you guys will look through this. Now I've also added a little link down here at the bottom where it says Post Media View Full Size. So you can just click that and go to it, and blow it up, whatever you need to do to look through them. But they only give 6 good reasons why you would want to do geoengineering and 27 reasons why it's a bad idea. So bravo to Alan Robach for that. But this is the kind of stuff you're not going to find anywhere else on the internet, let alone all in one place. And that's the purpose of weather modification history, is so that you can actually go through the history, learn it all, because God forbid we end up in a place like this where telescopes worthless by 2050. My daughter Caroline won't be able to see the stars. And why is that? It says right here, from aircraft exhaust trails and climate change, not to mention geoengineering, solar radiation management. So he mentions that in his list right here: effects on stargazing, effects on degrade terrestrial optical astronomy, as you can see. So this is a serious concern. It's right there. It's number 13, degrade terrestrial optical astronomy. You could say that's the case. So if you know the history, and you know the history going back to 1800, you're going to be better prepared to argue with people about this sort of thing. Yeah, benefit number 4, beautiful red and yellow sunsets. Who's not already seeing that? Let's see. Reduce surface air temperatures. It could cool the planet. Okay, that's what geoengineering is supposed to be. Increase plant productivity, increase terrestrial CO2 sink. Beautiful red and yellow sunsets. This is where it gets kind of weird, because he's only got 3 that are reasons why they should do this. And then 5 unexpected benefits. Hey, something cool might happen. And 6, prospect of implementation could increase drive for mitigation. Hey, if we actually start geoengineering, it might scare the shit out of people, and then they may want to actually clean up their act. That's a serious one right there. But the most important part, number 1, drought in Africa and Asia. And why is that important? Because in his video, what he says, let me just bring this up real quick, and I'm going to click over to here because I've got it bookmarked on my... This is on my YouTube channel, and what he says is this.
Same climate. Interestingly, when you instantaneously put in SO2, you get an El Nino, and you get a huge warming and drought over the Amazon. So
when you inject SO2 or sulfur into the atmosphere, you immediately get an El Nino, and you get drought over Brazil. So what they've found from doing all of their climate modeling, or making computer models of what a geoengineered world would look like, is pretty simple. It gets wetter in the northern hemisphere, and it gets drier in the southern hemisphere. So the reason that's important is because all of this is about figuring out how to, pay the dead people. And if you don't believe me, you can go to this page, which was posted in 2010 on Ken Caldera, geoengineer, his forum, SRM Geoengineering, how to deal with the losers or dead people. And it goes like this. It's likely that any solar radiation management geoengineering intervention will create winners and losers, and some nations may always be against any intervention whatsoever. Gregory Benford raised the issue of reaching an agreement on global scale and how problematic it would be. If, for example, the Arctic Council of Nations agreed to initiate a decade-long field trial to cool the Arctic by 1 degree Celsius, how would they deal with the complaints from nations who felt this experiment had induced a negative change in their climate? If in any given year there are floods, droughts, heat waves, etc., but during this field trial of geoengineering, a fraction of these events would be attributed, rightfully or wrongfully, partially or fully, to the intervention. Two questions arise. Could it be determined if any of the changes in the climate outside of the target area had occurred as a result of the intervention during a 10-year trial? How would aggrieved nations or peoples seek reparations for perceived negative impacts, scientifically proven or otherwise? And this is from Pete Irvine, who was a PhD student at the time, who is now an advocate for geoengineering. He does a lot of studies, has been published on David Keith's page and many other places. But regardless, this is really goes to the heart of the thing. How to deal with the losers, which are the dead people. If you don't believe me, you can actually listen to David Keith say it himself.
Program, and you put, say, the kind of program I think makes more sense to put about 1 million tons a year in, but let's say, you might end up killing many tens of thousands of people a year as a direct result of that decision. I think that has moral consequences. I don't sweep it under the rug. So this is a case where I take this much differently from Alan and think it's a much more serious issue. Now, it's true that as part of doing that, you would hope that the overall benefits of human mortality would be so that you would save many, many more people than that. But the fact that you would save more people than you kill doesn't mean there's no moral impact of making a decision that directly kills people. And I think that we who talk about
let's
this
hear
have
that
a
one
duty
more
to be-
time.
And you put, say, the kind of program I think makes more sense to put about 1 million tons a year in, but let's say, you might end up killing many tens of thousands of people a year as a direct result of that decision. I think that has moral consequences. I don't sweep it under the rug. So this is a case.
So that's Alan Robach right there. He's the one that came up with the 27 reasons why you shouldn't geoengineer. And this is David Keith, the one that's doing the experiment coming in the spring of next year, possibly. Scope X. And this guy is basically like holding his head going, oh my God, where he just said we're killing people. And the title of this video is Geoengineering Debate, David Keith Responds to Chemtrails. And it's all the way at 750, but luckily for you, if you go to his page that I've created here, Stratospheric Sulfur Geoengineering Benefits and Risks, Alan Robach's speech, you can just click the link right there and it'll take you right to that part. Which is why, come on for me, panelists call for creation of World Commission to handle solar radiation management. Interestingly enough, and this is dated December 5th, 2018, by the Wilson Center New Security Beat. And what they're basically saying is, look, this will kill, as even David Keith admits, many tens of thousands of people, and hopefully we will save more people than we kill. And when I was on Ken Caldera's forum, and I was debating David Keith and Ken Caldera and Stephen Salter, John Latham, I put it to them like this. If climate change kills people, then God killed people. If you do geoengineering, you killed people. So there's a big difference right there. And he says, I don't sweep this under the rug. Yet I'm still going to do this experiment because my experiment will lead to the possibility of us actually doing geoengineering SRM on a worldwide basis using pumps and pipes and specialized planes, not just the plane farts and what everybody calls chemtrails that we see today. Because the main difference is what we see today is at the tropopause. It's in the troposphere. It's not in the same, in the same area of the atmosphere. Things in the troposphere would rain out in a month, maybe a couple months. But pumping sulfur, aluminum, these sorts of things into the stratosphere, they could remain in place for 1 to 5 years, maybe even longer, and create an El Nino, dry up the southern hemisphere. There was a thing called the Integrated Assessment of Geoengineering Proposals, said exactly that. Ben Kravitz was the guy who really studies the effects of geoengineering on rainfall on a worldwide basis. And Ben Kravitz, has long said, this will dry up the southern hemisphere. Those will be dead people. Appreciate it, Stephen. Thank you, man. So this is a serious topic, and I take this very seriously on weathermodificationhistory.com. If you guys haven't seen this is my book I carried to the Weather Modification Conference, and this is some artwork by Dominic Marama. But we say, don't blame climate change. Blame the climate changers. Because there are so many people screwing with our weather that we really need a solution. And my solution is the Environmental Modification Accountability Act. And when I went to the Weather Modification Conference, I had things like this that show, this is from the U.S. military, weather modification using carbon black, increase cirrus cloud cover. Oh, wait, we call those chemtrails. Oh, wait, me and my daughter, we call them plane farts. But regardless, the U.S. military wants to create clouds to deny visual satellite or high altitude reconnaissance, decrease light level for nighttime operations. And I had this flip book ready, just to go through everything that they could possibly say, oh, well, this isn't an issue. None of this is real. My daughter drew that. No controlling the weather. I took that and I showed him that. It's pretty great stuff. And on the flip side of that, these are the guys controlling the weather at the Department of Homeland Security that want to steer hurricanes. In this pile of people are 2 geoengineers, Stephen Salter and John Latham, and William Cotton, and I know all these names, but you should know them too. So that's the purpose of this book that I took with me to the Weather Modification Conference, was to show them my Environmental Modification Accountability Act. And on the one side, I've got pretty much my solutions to the, what I call the Environmental Modification Accountability Act, which is 2 parts, transparency and verification. So I had this flip book in my hand, and every scientist I met, I said, do you agree to transparency? Because if you don't, then you're pretty nefarious because the public has a right to know. You can see this entire presentation on ClimateViewer.com/nmod. It is available right there. So some of you may be asking, what the heck is nmod? Well, that's what weathermodificationhistory.com is for. So let's jump back over there and let's go look at that. So I'm going to scroll down to the 70s because some of you may not know this even happened. And right about here is what's called the Environmental Modification Environmental Modification Convention (ENMOD) Weather Warfare Ban. And this is the actual language from it. Before it was called ENMOD, it had a much longer title: the Convention on the Prohibition of Military or Any Other Hostile Use of Environmental Modification Techniques. And specifically, what it bans is desiring to prohibit effectively military or any other hostile use of environmental modification techniques. Each state party to this convention undertakes not to engage in military or other hostile use of environmental modification techniques having widespread, long-lasting, or severe effects as a means of destruction, damage, or injury to any other state party. Any technique for changing through the deliberate manipulation of natural processes, the dynamics, composition, or structure of the Earth, including its biota, lithosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere, or the outer space, this convention shall not hinder the use of environmental modification techniques for peaceful purposes. So it doesn't ban weather modification, it bans weather warfare. The problem is, it did not create a way to catch somebody in the act. So what they say is you can lodge a complaint with the Security Council of the United Nations if you believe that somebody's doing weather warfare. Like I said, there's no way to catch somebody doing it. Here's the interesting part. Any state party to this convention may propose amendments to the convention, which is what I'm doing. The NMOD AA, the Environmental Modification Accountability Act, is an amendment to the weather warfare ban of 1978, which will bring accountability and transparency, trust but verify, to catch the government in the act. Because we know that they're in the act. You can go to the weather warfare section, and if you do, what you're going to see is that the CIA concerned rogue geoengineering is undetectable. Operational defenses through weather control in 2030. Steering cyclones with thunderstorm solar-powered satellite. Harnessing artificial tornadoes. Dr. Evil's plan for geoengineering. Eco-terrorism with electromagnetic waves. The Test Technology Symposium 97, weather modification. Weather as a force multiplier, owning the weather in 2025. And Freedom of Information Act request for proving that the United States Navy and Air Force are at it again. So if we know that the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy, and obviously Russia and China are all involved in screwing with the weather, then obviously they don't care about the Environmental Modification Act, that weather warfare was banned. So that's the purpose of all of this. If you go to the bottom, you can see related posts, which I just added that code, so you can actually go and see Operation Popeye. This is when we did weather warfare over Vietnam. It was also known as Operation Motor Pool, Operation Intermediary Compatriot, weather warfare over Vietnam. Goals: softening roads, causing landslides along roadways, washing out river crossings, maintain saturated soil conditions beyond their normal lifespan. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a whole lot of reference links. And like I said, I've just updated the code. Before, all of the reference links were just links. The newer ones, they have titles with them. I'm going back through because you can see now references have titles with the links, but I got to go back through and edit 150 separate posts to do this. But regardless, you can see all of this stuff. This is the actual weather weapons we used over Vietnam. I put tons of work into this, Loretta. I mean, I started creating this 2 years ago. And I've put thousands of hours into just weathermodificationhistory.com, let alone 5 years into the ClimateViewer.org map, and 7-8 years into ClimateViewer.com. These are the cloud seeding bombs, or the cold cloud modification system from China Lake, California, where they created these weather weapons in Vietnam. So you can actually see cloud seeding bombs right there. This is Jack Anderson, the man, and Jack Anderson was the one who saw the note on Lyndon Johnson's desk that said we're doing weather warfare in Vietnam. He originally disclosed this in the Pentagon Papers. Then he got in touch with Senator Claiborne Pell. They had a bunch of hearings on that, and it led to many newspaper articles. These were recreated by Dominic Marama beautifully. You can see now the full-size images of all of these, so you can read these. I'm going to flip through a couple real quick. The weather as a weapon of war. Cloud seeding over Vietnam. U.S. turns rain into war weapon. CIA rain-making over Laos has only indifferent results. Acts of God in Congress. Rain-making over trail tried by CIA, 1972. Senators to seek NATO ban on weather wars, which is the NMOD ban. So just, the list just goes on and on and on. Weather modification used for warfare, Senator hints. Pell, that's Claiborne Pell, says conclusion is reached from Defense Department answers. Rainmaking used as weapon in Southeast Asia. Weather warfare. U.S. urges ban on weather manipulative warfare. U.S. Soviets propose ban on weather war. This all happened as a result of Operation Popeye. You will not find this information anywhere else on the internet, let alone all in one place. Towards environmental warfare, News Scientist. And, we've got some video footage, Operation Popeye. My presentation, Geoengineering, Weather Modification, and Weaponizing Nature, where I go through all of this, the NMOD weather warfare ban, and, all the stuff that happened as a result. So you guys can check all of that stuff out. You're not going to find it anywhere else. But back to the NMOD thing real quick. So, like I said, this is a real thing. You can go and check out the links yourself. This is the Convention on the Prohibition of Military or Any Other Hostile Use of Environmental Modification Techniques, NMOD. And, my solution, which is the Environmental Modification Accountability Act. And it's two parts. One, that people have to give prior notice before screwing with the weather. We're not going to be able to ban weather modification altogether. There's billions and possibly trillions of dollars invested in it at this point. But a good start would be them telling us before they do it, so that if they do hurt people or kill people, that, we can sue them in a court of law. And all of that would go to what I call the International Registry of Atmospheric Experimentation, which would be a website that shows in real time who's screwing with the weather, where, and when, and why. And then, the second part would be to create a sensor network to verify the composition of our atmosphere, chemical, aerosol gases, and electromagnetic activity by creating both citizen-powered and government-sponsored sensor networks with data publicly available and displayed in real time, similar to what I do on ClimateViewer.org. So on ClimateViewer.org, you can actually come in here and, see, real-time satellites, everything that you see on NASA Whirlwind, come in here and get a good look. Plus I have many different sensors. You can come in and screw with the opacity on that and make it see through. If you really got a good computer, you can do it in 3D. And one of the really cool features on this sucker is I have an Earth monitor, which has everything else built in, like the Go 16 viewer. So you can just bring that up real fast. Flight tracking, stuff in space, satellite tracking maps. The list goes on and on and on. But the purpose of this is to be able to track everything going on simultaneously worldwide, so that we can catch people in the act of doing weather modification. And I'm constantly working on this thing. I hope that you guys will come over and check it out. The new timeline is pretty darn sexy, if I do say so myself. I'm pretty proud of it. It's got a lot of sort features. You can sort by tags like doped jet fuel, hurricane modification, and just show nothing but, like Project Storm Fury, Project Cirrus, the Department of Homeland Security, hurricane modification workshop, geoengineering governance, federal funding, the list goes on, directed energy weapons like the solar-powered satellite, Death Ray. You're not going to see this stuff anywhere else. So if you guys will dig into it, share it, please. Thank you, Smiling Sue-Ann. I greatly appreciate that donation. If you guys will, share this stuff out, it'll really lead to people getting educated on the subject. And you can't argue with any of the facts here because, when we're talking about chemtrails, you need to know things like that in 1958, Navy scientist creates clouds, breaks them up. How they do it? Carbon black controls clouds. Navy creation destroys clouds. Ordinary carbon black is used, which is why it's the title of my, my presentation, Carbon Black Dust, the Chemtrail Secret, because even back in 1958, they had discovered that lady meteorologists toys with clouds to seek tranquilizer for bad storms. Dr. Florence Van Straten had figured out carbon black dust can do all of this. Does your voice ever change tone? I'm trying to be a reporter here. For sake. Climate Crime, who the heck? Who's got the nickname Climate Crime? Oh my goodness, you should be ashamed of yourself. Speaking of climate crimes, I just added that to the timeline. Climate Global Control Trading LLC creates and steers hurricanes with ionospheric technology. So you guys can check that out. If you don't know what a climate crime is, you can check that out here. Thank you, Bamboo. Appreciate it, man. New to the channel, but I want to say thanks. Crucial info. Yes, I've been long at work for this to bring just the facts to people. Eyes to See Ministries. Yes, I'm trying to get some free time to do an interview. My wife has taken a full-time job, and I'm, full-time daddy daycare. So getting kind of crazy, but there's your climate crime, your bitcoins for barrels of water. Shout out to the guy in chat who has the nickname Climate Crime. You crack me up. So there's your climate crime. The concept of monetization of the global market of water resources by means of cryptocurrency, the climate crime. Ooh. Anyway, so these guys, I actually talked to them on the phone about a week ago. I've got an interview set up with them in the near future, and they claim to have created and steered Tropical Storm Ashuba. And you can see a map of that, as you can see right here. Map of Tropical Cyclone Ashoba. Click on that thing right there, and it'll actually take you to the time and date, and you can see it right there. This is the tropical cyclone they say they created. If you go to the map list and you click right here, you can actually click the date, go to the next day, and then go to the next day and see that sucker actually make landfall in the United Arab Emirates where they're trying to get the rain to go. And this is an extremely rare event. They don't normally happen right here, so pretty darn rare. Anyway, this is the new interactive timeline on weathermodificationhistory.com. Super proud of it. Came out really, really well. I hope that you guys will dig into that. I'll drop a link to that in chat. And then I also want to mention briefly that I did update the newspapers list. So Dominic has sent me over all of his latest newspapers, and we are now up to a whopping 875 newspapers dating from the earliest being, I believe this was like 1880. This is a patent from July 13, 1880. Yeah. And the list goes on. So you can go through these and see this is an absolutely huge image. I don't know why I'm clicking on it. It's not going to load because it's like 20 freaking megabyte and I'm live streaming. But you can see that I have now uploaded the full-size images of these. And they're really, 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 really big. Thank you to CM Mac and SOJFNN. I appreciate you guys, man. Thank you so much for the donations. All of this is free work. It's a labor of love. You're not gonna find this stuff anywhere else, but you're gonna see stuff like producing rain with X-rays. 1919. And the list just goes on and on. Spraying liquid rainmaking machine to produce natural storm. Rainmaking airplanes from Montana, 1872. And you scroll on through this. It goes all the way up to present day. Just tons and tons of stuff. Man-made snow from airplanes in a Seagram's VO commercial. Just amazing stuff. Let me see if I can find this one last one just so we can end with a joke real quick. I'm going to scroll down. Give me a second because there's a lot in here. Where is it? I believe this is it. You just can't make this stuff up. Colorado Representative John Fowler, Democrat from Newtown, observed that airlines in ads for ski excursions promise fresh snow or your money back. So even as far back as 1979, you got a guy talking about Vail, Colorado, and that the airlines are controlling the weather and they're going to provide snow for the mountaintops. And interestingly enough, you cannot make this stuff up. Weather may be unnaturally severe because of unnatural weather modification. Bulletin Journal, Concord Publishing House, 1979. I want you guys to read this because this is one of the best stories I've ever read. We're going to end on a funny one. Representative Hill, commenting on the testimony, said, I can't take it all at fact value, but there's good food for thought. Hill mentioned the late Ray Batman. No shit, a guy named Ray Batman. His name is freaking Batman. All right? So, Ray Batman, a rancher from Grain Valley, Montana. Batman was a man of firm views and fat wallet. He contributed to political campaigns and thus could expound his views to tolerant cars. I don't know what that means. One spring was so wet that Batman couldn't plant his crops. He got U.S. Senator Stuart Symington on the phone. He told Symington various international interests were tinkering with the weather. Certainly the national government was aware of this, and would Symington arrange for the rain to let up so Batman could get his crops in? Symington listened and said, well, he hoped the weather would clear up. The rain stopped the next day. The trouble was, it stayed stopped. By midsummer, there was a near drought. Batman called Symington and complained. It took longer this time, but 2 or 3 days later, Batman's crops received moisture. Nobody could tell him there wasn't a higher power in Washington, D.C. Weather may be unnaturally severe because of unnatural modification. Batman and the U.S. Congress and his fat wallet. You just can't make this stuff up. Ray Batman. So I find this stuff fascinating. I think that a lot of you will too. It's all available on weathermodification.com, weathermodificationhistory.com. And, this is from the newspaper section. I made a post specifically about this newspaper because I was fascinated by it. But you guys can check those newspaper links out as well. It's at weathermodificationhistory.com/newspapers. The other stuff on there, we've got the technology, people, patents, programs, laws, the map, the presentation solutions, and then a gallery which has documentaries. The documentaries I mentioned earlier, like the Carbon Black Dust, the Chemtrail Secret for Weather Warfare. Some of my other videos, what in the world are they spraying, why in the world are they spraying, Frankenskies, Overcast, Shade the Motion Picture, and a bunch of other videos. My EPA hearing on jet pollution, when I actually went up to the EPA and raised hell to their face, and I brought some of my friends, including Madison Star Moon, who is in chat right now. Shout out to you, girl, for coming with me. We gave them hell. It was great. And then, images. There's the image. These are all the images from the different timeline posts and videos. So you can just watch those. If you want to just flip through them, you can literally just click them and go on to the next video. Tons of stuff to look at. I hope you guys will dig in. WeatherModificationHistory.com, upgraded and fully put together, looking beautiful. I still have a bunch of stuff I need to add to this. I'm going to be adding the guy from Iran who said that Europe and Israel are stealing their clouds. I'm going to be adding the Chernobyl rains that Russia did, the Beijing Olympics where Chinese controlled the weather over that, and a whole bunch of geoengineering stuff that, obviously I haven't been able to add till recently. I've already added a couple of these things. If you go to geoengineering and just click on the tag, what you're going to see is that, I've already added a bunch of new entries in there. At one point, this timeline was actually 3 separate timelines. And I went through and, basically updated that sucker to, let's just refresh this page real quick and click geoengineering, go down here. And, this is the guy who invented geoengineering, the term, Cesare Marchetti. These are kind of some of the things that I'm adding back in just so that people can know where all of this stuff comes from, because those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. That's Cesare Marchetti, inventor of the term geoengineering. When did he invent it? 1977. Please guys, check out weathermodificationhistory.com, because those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. I do appreciate those who gave out some super chats tonight. I really thank you for that. Let's see, we have Smiling Sue Ann, Bamboo Soldier, CM Mac, SOJFNN. I appreciate you guys donating tonight. And Stephen Mercer, thank you. You've been a multiple donor. I really appreciate that. And everybody who supports me on patreon.com/ClimateViewer, you guys help me keep all this stuff going. I've got 3 separate websites I run, and I put about 40 to 60 hours a week into this. Kind of addicted to information. And all of this is free of charge. You'll notice that at the bottom of the page it says that everything on this page is Creative Commons, meaning that, and you can see right here, Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial 4.0 International, which basically means you are free to share this material. You can copy and redistribute this material in any medium or format. You can adapt it, remix, transport, or build upon the material on weathermodificationhistory.com, but you must give appropriate credit, provide a link to the license, or indicate if changes were made. So give a link back to Weather Modification History. Show us some love. Show people where you got the information from so that they can see the whole picture, not just the one thing you reposted. And non-commercial, you may not sell this stuff. So this is done for free. Once again, I didn't change my page. So you're free to do whatever you like with the material on ClimateViewer.com, ClimateViewer.org, and WeatherModificationHistory.com. but you got to give appropriate credit, and you cannot sell it. So give us a link back. That's all that I ask. And you are free to spread the gospel, spread the word, because the goal here is to inform as many people as possible about the truth, the full history of weather modification, and that is available from 1800 to present at weathermodificationhistory.com. So guys, I appreciate you tuning in tonight. I haven't done a video in quite a while because I've been so busy working on this website. I actually had so much more I wanted to do to it. I said, go ahead and upload it the way it is right now, and then make more changes in the near future. Because I'm constantly going to be adding new posts to this. Dominic's going to be constantly finding new newspaper articles. We're constantly going to be working on all of this stuff. And I'm wearing a special t-shirt tonight. I hope you guys actually read that. Only when the last tree has died and the last river has been poisoned, then the last fish has been caught, will we realize that we can't eat money. And that's what's going to happen if we don't, handle these climate changers, these geoengineers, these weather modifiers. We really need to, put a stop to all of the shenanigans and secrecy. So I hope that you guys will support the NMOD-AA Act. Make suggestions. If you got a better method, if you think that something could be added onto this, at some point in the near future, I will be presenting this to our State Department so that it gets written into law. And I want to, change the world so that my daughter doesn't grow up in this world that we're growing up in right now and have geoengineering over our houses every single day, and more geoengineering to come with David Keith and company. So, love you, mean it, guys. Information is power, and with power comes great responsibility. So, I only ask that one thing, that when you learn all this stuff, that you tell the truth about it, spread the word, and attack ideas, not people.